Okay, here's some homework help for the sine graph section. First question, determine amplitude, period, phase shift of the function. So there's a function, remembering that these are the transformations that you could have, remembering that there's issues there in the middle. They say amplitude. Amplitude's the number out front, so the amplitude's got to be 1. Number's 1. Period is always 2 pi over b. So 2 pi over b, in this case here, the number in front of the x is a 1. So 2 pi over 1, so the period is just 2 pi. Phase shift is c over b, and there's no number. There's no, like the brackets could be here, but there's no number being added or subtracted from the x inside the brackets. So the period or the phase shift would be 0. In other words, it wouldn't be shifting to the left or to the right. Okay, next question. Same kind of things. Oh, but this is a cos graph. But sine and cos graphs, the transformations for each of them are the same. They might start and end in different places, but the transformations are the same. So we can do the same thing. Amplitude is the number out front. And so that would be amplitude is 4/7. The period, there's no number in front of there, so the period is just simply 2 pi. And then the phase shift, it hasn't moved to the left or to the right, and so the phase shift would be 0 or 0 pi. Now they asked us to graph this. I should graph that. So a cos graph, unlike the sine graph, starts at the top, goes down, and returns to the top in 2 pi. So it would go something like this. Oops. That doesn't look really good. More like that. Okay. So if the amplitude is 4/7, and that's the only change that has happened, then the graph will be, it'd look something like that. Not go down as much and not return as high. So it'd be flattened a little bit. Okay, determine the amplitude, period, phase shift for this one. Oh, we've got more stuff in here. Amplitude, number out front, quarter. Period is, put it down here. Period is 2 pi over b. In this case, b is the number out front there, which is 1. So 2 pi over 1, so the amplitude or the period is just 2 pi. Phase shift is c over b, and c in this case is in pi over 2, and b is 1, so pi over 2 divided by 1 is just going to be pi over 2. So the phase shift, it's going to be pi over 2, but it's going left. Since it's going left, we usually put a negative sign out front to indicate that it's going left, and pi over 2. And then they say use the graphing tool. So the graphing tool, first thing I would do is it's moving pi over 2 to the left. So I think instead of starting the graph here, it's starting over there. And then, so it'll end, instead of ending at 2 pi, it's going to end right there. And it only can go up to a quarter, or 0.25. That's about there. So the graph will go up and down, something like that. I think with the graphing tool that they have, they allow you to type these answers in, and it affects the graph. Okay, determine, I don't have to graph things. Amplitude, number up front, 3. Period, 2 pi over b. So it's 2 pi over a half, or that's 2 pi divided by a half, or that's 2 pi times 2 over 1, or that's 4 pi. That's the period. Phase shift is c over b. I wanted to say phase shift was just pi over 2 to the right, but if there's a b value in there, that complicates things. So that would be pi over 2 over 1 over 2. Complex fraction. So pi over 2 divided by 1 over 2, pi over 2 times 2 over 1. The 2's cancel, so it's pi. So the phase shift is pi, and it's going to the right, so I would make this a positive. Same thing, amplitude is 1/4. Don't get thinking that it's negative. The negative, all that does is flip it over, but it doesn't change the amplitude. Amplitude's still 1/4. Period's 2 pi over b, or 2 pi over, b is always the thing in front of the x, so it's 2 pi over 2 pi, which is just be 1. Phase shift, there's nothing being added or subtracted inside the brackets, so the phase shift is 0, or 0 pi. It's not moving anywhere, to the left or to the right. Okay, another coast graph, but that's okay, everything's the same. Amplitude number out front, there's no number, so we assume it to be a 1, so it's just a 1. Not a -1, +1. Period, 2 pi over b, so it's 2 pi over 1/3. So you end up timesing by 3, so the period would be 6 pi. Phase shift is c over b, so c is pi over 3 divided by 1 over 3, or pi over 3 times 3 over 1. The 3's cancel, so it would just be pi. So the phase shift is pi. Since this is negative, it's going to the right. So pi over, its phase shift is pi, and pi to the right, or a positive pi. They didn't say anything about a vertical translation. They didn't ask for that, but it would be 1/5. And it would be reflected on the x-axis. Same thing, amplitude, 1/3. Period, 2 pi over b, which is pi. Pi's cancel, period is just 2. Phase shift is c over b, so c is a 2 and b is a pi. So the phase shift is 2 over pi, and it's a minus, so it's going to the right. Or if you just put a positive, 2 over pi is fine. Identify the following function. It's a sine graph. It hasn't been moved at all. There's no plus stuff here, but it is being reflected. So instead of the normal graph, sine graph starts here, goes up and down in 2 pi. But because this is a minus, it's going to, instead of starting to go up, it's going to go down like that. And since this is 5, the period is going to be squished, so it'll be squished a lot more. I guess you could say that the period for the graph to repeat itself would be 2 pi over b, and in this case b is 5. Okay, so it's flipped over and it repeats itself once in 2 pi over 5. Okay, now usually the graph starts in the middle. This one here, it got pushed over to the right. Can't be that one because there's no b or no c value. Okay, this one should start here. Instead of going up, it started to go down. Good. And it repeats itself. There's the period right there. It repeated itself. It went down, up, and it started to go down again in 2 pi over 5. I'm thinking that one. This one here, it started to go down. That's good. But its period is 2 pi, not 2 pi over 5. Can't be that one. I'm picking that one. Identify the graph. Sine 3x 1/5. So the 1/5 just means it's squished. So it can't be this one. It could be either one of those because they're squished. But then this hopefully will tell me. So the thing in front of the x is a b value, and that'll help me get the period. So the period is 2 pi over b, and in this case b is 3. So the graph should repeat itself every 2 pi over 3. Oh, now this is a sine graph. Sine graphs are supposed to start right there and go up. This one didn't start there, it started up high, not that one. This one started where it should, and it repeated itself in 2 pi over 3. That's the one right there. There was a D too, but I like C. All right, last question. Determine the equation of the graph. Oh, this is an interesting one. So it looks like it says, this graph here, to me, I look at it initially, and it's been moved up 1. So it can't be this one, can't be that one. So it's one of these two here. Now, this says shifted to the left by pi over 4. This one says shifted to the right by pi over 4. So if the normal graph starts here and starts going up and down, I want to look at this graph and see. So it's been moved up, but this is sort of the starting place right there, because it'll go up, down, and finish right there. So that's been moved to the right a little bit. So I would say it's not that one. It has to be this one. It has to get moved to the right. All right, hopefully that helps you in completing your homework for this section.